Yeah. He doesn't know what to do. Yeah. Yeah. Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. I have a dinosaur right here trying to eat me. So today we're in the shop. We're here, we got the 16 and then the old 16, which this year is going to be the 61. So that's that chassis over there, powder coated silver. So yep, we said we owed you a video from the garage where we're going to go over some of the stuff that we've done over the winter, sort of contributed to the success of this car at the first race. So stick around, we'll get into that shortly. I gotta change gears, Jake's working on sanding, and Dennis is currently doing some organizing and looking at a couple of the different wheel halves and stuff like that we have, because we're trying to switch some stuff up there. But like I said, we'll keep you guys updated, and we're gonna get into some of the stuff that went into this car over the winter, talk about our friends over at M2 Metal Treatment and stuff like that. So.
I mean, just stuff. All right, so we found a little issue, not issue with the wheels. It's moreover that we're running two different style wheels on the car, and one of the measurements that they do in tech is that we're going to check the offset of the car. So we're allowed 6 inches of offset. So this is our left rear wheel. It's a style that has a little bump out here that's different. Well, that's the newer style.
On the bead, yeah.
On the bead. This was our right rear, which is the older style. So basically, if you could see, when they're sticking the gauge to each other, they would stick the gauge here, or they should stick it here, but every tech guy's a little bit different. They could stick it here, and then it's a non-issue if they were sticking both sides the same. However, with this being on the left rear and bumping out further than this, it robs us of the ability, depending on how they measure it, of 8 1/8 to 3/16 of offset. So at Monadnock, I noticed the wheels were different, and I went to the tech guy at Monadnock to get the clarification as to how they were going to read the gauge to make sure that we were going to be good, as opposed to them getting a false reading by this being further out on the left rear and them thinking that our left rear is tucked in more than our right rear is allowed. So what I did was, just so that we're not having to deal with that, or even to make it easier for the tech guy, because I've been there, I did tech for a few years, we basically went out and bought the back half of the wheel, a couple of them to replace it, so that we have the same exact bump out on both wheels, so that the reading will be more accurate and we can run what we want to run without having to worry about having to have a discussion in the tech as to how they're measuring it and everything. So just basically putting them the same on both sides. We're also going to replace the rubber core valve stem and put an aluminum one in. And I don't have the aluminum one here.
It's tucked in behind those.
Here's the aluminum one that we run. It's basically, will pop in, it's got a nut on it. And the reason I switched over to these is just over time, when people are checking the air, we constantly are adjusting the air pressure over and over again. And if somebody's not getting on there quite straight and they're putting force on it, you could end up breaking one of these right before you head out onto the track, and then you're in a scramble to either replace the tire or try to get a valve stem in. So that's why I switched over to these a couple years ago. Just makes it a lot easier that we never have to worry about a rubber one breaking, as you know, from somebody just making a mistake or just pulling it off the wrong way or whatever. So that's what we're doing to the wheels today. And we didn't go to the dyno. They changed the date on us at the last second, and we're not able to make it on the date that we're going. So, but hopefully, if we do well enough at Lee, we'll be forced to go to the dyno. So I got to get back to work here. I'll check in a little bit and I'll show you the bird cages and talk a little bit about the M2 bearings that I told you I'd tell you about. So all done. Bead seal is on and new stem. Bolted all back together, 3 parts.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit. I kind of throw it out there and say, you know, we replaced the bird cages with the wider bird cages. We went to M2 bearings, you know, and that obviously helped us get our win. And you know, what I do want to clarify is that the car we bought is a winning car, and Danny's won in that car before, so we definitely didn't buy a fixer-upper. But the goal over the winter was to get that thing as mechanically sound as this one was. This is the car we ran last year as the 16, which will be coming out in June as the 61. You know, with Danny's talent and Max's help and everything, we know if we can get that car to finish as many races as this car finished last year, we'll be in real good shape. So I just want to clarify that. But we had switched this car over. These are the bird cages that the original Hawks and the Stealth came with. They run a single bearing in them. Now the Beast chassis run the wider bearings. They run a bird cage that's a lot wider. Well, the Seymour Performance Products had somebody make up what is essentially a double bird cage. So it's the same exact bird cage, and it basically takes probably take it out of the bag. When you do it like that, now you're running 2 bearings in here.
So yeah, you can see it's wider
on the axle. So you can see that. So the advantage of having 2 bearings, or the wider one, if you think of the forces that these cars have in the corner as they roll, and you know, and the side bite that's in them, that there's a lot of tension that are put on these bearings. Now in the past I used another bearing company, a lot of money for the bearings, and when I found M2 and reached out to that guy, every single conversation I've had with John has been great. Like, tell me how to maintenance the bearings, everything that we need to know. So I definitely don't feel like we're out by ourselves. And I had a conversation with somebody at the track, and they're like, I don't really think that the bearings make that big of a difference. But when we were at Monadnock, I said to Max, I'm like, yeah, the bearings, you know, this has all the good M2 bearings in it. And he said, I can tell pushing it around the pits, it rolls a lot easier. And last year I had a conversation with another team, and I said, yeah, if you think about the logic in it, if it's a lot easier for you to push around the pits or even load the car yourself, that's a lot easier for the engine to push that thing along when it's on the track. So there is an advantage. You know, some people don't believe in them, but the bottom line is, like I said, I reached out to M2 and I thanked him. We're a low buck team, and he could sell his bearings for a lot more, and he definitely treats us right. And like I said, I'm a firm believer in, when I'm pushing these cars around compared to before we had them, I'm definitely a firm believer that the motors are working less. It's given us a better center of the corner, through the corners when the load is on them, that there's no friction, no bind. So like I said, thank you. You know, I'm really happy with the Seymour Performance bird cages, really happy with M2 bearings. You know, Draco springs, you know, we've done a lot with the springs, where if you hold a Draco spring up next to a competitor spring, there's going to be a lot less coils in the Draco, which, like I said, when the chassis roll and you know that you're coming down on the right rear, the more that spring's allowed to stay true in travel, you know, the car reacts. And that was Max swears by him, I swear by him, and I think we got Danny swearing by him now too. So, but the last thing I want to talk about, because I said we were going to cover everything. So like I said, we bought a winning car, but we weren't finishing races. We had problems with overheating with the fuel, which we took the fuel settings from this car that I've known, and this car runs very little fuel issues. And we put him in that car and Danny loved it. I don't know if you remember at the end of the video, he said 185, that's where he wanted the temperature, and that's where I set it for him. And we'll cover on another video, for those that don't know, how tricky it is to set up a mechanical fuel injection. But we talked about the motor plate, and the reason I have this set up is that we chewed up the drivetrain multiple times in that car. And over the winter, I took this motor plate that Matt Seavey had made for us when he was driving for us, which we know has the solid, everything is exactly where it needs to be on here. So what we found was that these holes on the motor plate on the new car were 1/8 of an inch off, all in the same direction. So when the pilot shaft was going into the back of the transmission on the clutch, it had to be forced through there because it didn't line up perfectly. So the way these things work is there's a spring in the drive shaft that covers everything in the car, and this thing here was basically chewing up all that bearing. It was destroying the housing, and we'll show more about that later. But when we found this, we were able to get the right engine plate from Bobby Seymour, and who somebody originally made them for him, and so he stood behind the motor plate, and you know, the drivetrain in that is as good as the drivetrain in this. So like I said, if we can get that car, which we're already off to a good start, to finish as many races as this car did, we know we're going to be in good shape. So things didn't go as quick at the garage today as we thought. What I do want to do is concentrate more for those that aren't 100% familiar with these cars, and get a little bit more of the technical side of it in some of the videos, instead of us just saying at the track, this is what happened or that. So
we'll bring back the garage series for the real in-depth technical stuff.
Yeah, because we'll be, in the next couple weeks, we'll be putting the motor in this. And did I mention who's driving it?
No, who's driving that?
But we're ready to get back at it at Lee. We have to finish all the maintenance on the car. We've got some new lettering on the car, and we've got another new sponsor coming on this coming week. So we'll see how that all plays out. But somebody approached me when they saw the car and said that they want to join our team. So hopefully we'll be announcing that early next week. Really excited for that. And we'll see you at Lee. So like the video, subscribe to the Home Track channel, and did I do it right, DJ?
I think so.
I think in the last video you said I forgot how to do it.